Hello, my name is Alicia Shapiro with AInews.com, and welcome to another episode of our Driving Tomorrow Conversations with Industry Leaders, where we explore the latest developments and newest innovations in the world of artificial intelligence. Today, I'm excited to be speaking with Paul Konsbruck, the CEO of LuxConnect, a company at the forefront of Europe's digital transformation. Based in Luxembourg, LuxConnect is redefining what's possible for data centers and connectivity with a strong focus on sustainability, innovation, and high performance infrastructure. Under Paul's leadership, LuxConnect has become a critical player in supporting the explosive growth of AI and high performance computing, while setting new standards for energy efficient and carbon neutral operations. In today's interview, we'll discuss LuxConnect's role in advancing Luxembourg as a digital hub, the infrastructure demands of the AI era, and how their cutting edge solutions like hosting the MeluXina supercomputer are shaping the future of data driven technologies. So, thank you for joining us today, Paul.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm very excited about being here. Thank you.
Oh, me too. I'm glad to have you here. As I mentioned, LuxConnect operates cutting edge and sustainable data centers at the heart of Europe. With the explosive growth of AI and the demand for high performance computing, what do you see as the evolving role of European data centers like LuxConnect in meeting those infrastructure demands?
Yeah, I'm ignoring your question for 5 seconds.
No
I'm
worries.
sorry. Yeah, I used to work with politicians for quite some time, so I'm used to not responding to questions that I'm asked. Just to give you a general image of who we are and what we do, LuxConnect is a company, and that is something that might be surprising for an audience that is not European, is that our main and only shareholder is the state. It's Luxembourg state. But we are not functioning under, I would call it, a system that is rather known as communism, that it's not who we are. But the thing is that Luxembourg is quite a small country, so it's quite difficult for foreign investors, especially from the private sector, to invest into something like infrastructure, knowing that the market is very limited. And that is why quite often, because there is a market failure, the state itself decides to invest into something. But we do that in Luxembourg under purely private and commercial focused circumstances, meaning that some 18, 20 years ago, the Luxembourg state had the idea of investing into infrastructure, mainly dark fiber and also data center capacity, in order to make it available for the private market. That was the idea behind. It's just the same thing that why you are building roads or why you are building railways, etc.
Right.
So that was the idea. And in that same, and that is important to mention, because behind this is one thing, that is, it's not commercially driven, even though we function like a private company, but our main goal is not to generate an utmost and maximum of profit. And the second thing is that we do something where we think that it makes sense for the general economy and for the ecosystem as such. So that is why our company exists, and that is our main mission. And a couple of years ago, it was data center infrastructure and connectivity. After that, it was the HPC, so the high performance computer, where I'll come back to. And more recently, it's the sovereign cloud solutions that we are also offering in cooperation with, for example, Google, but also with other actors in the market. But that is what we do. And the HPC, for example, it's now, we are just had a week ago, we had the green light to actually buy the second generation of it, because the first MeluXina, that's the name we baptized it, was the Luxembourgish HPC. And the thing, and that is very unique in Europe, it's not only focused on research and R&D actually. So it's also available for the private actors, for the industry, for the market. I could give you the example, for example, of Goodyear, who is a well-known tire manufacturer in the United States, who has a huge manufacturing unit also here in Luxembourg, and they actually are using the Luxembourgish HPC to do their research and their R&D activities. So that is something that we do in Luxembourg, so that the private sector can actually make use of an infrastructure that was made available by the Luxembourg state indirectly. So that is what we are and what we do.
I love that. That's really cool. You're setting the groundwork for everybody to be able to use the infrastructure. I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
That is what we do. It's actually setting a framework so that it's not, how to put this, it's not actually that we would interfere into private initiatives, but it's actually stating and making it possible so to set the framework actually to make private initiatives possible. That is the idea behind.
I see. This question might build on that. So, how has your fiber infrastructure and your data centers, how has that positioned Luxembourg as a key hub for international business and AI-driven technologies across Europe? You touched on that, but maybe you can elaborate on that a little more.
Yeah. So Luxembourg, just to give you because it's important to set also there the framework somehow. It's a country that has only 600,000 inhabitants. So it would be a city somewhere in the US.
Mhm.
And it's 52 kilometers to 81 kilometers. So it's a very small country. Smaller than Switzerland, for example, just to set some example. And that is, at some point, you could say it's a disadvantage because you don't have the size that you would need for some industries, but it also is a huge advantage for some other industries. Luxembourg is the second largest place of the fund industry, for example. We have the second largest fund industry in the world. First is the United States, and just behind that is Luxembourg, for example. We have until today, until Elon Musk is doing something else, we do still have the largest satellite operator in the world, for example, is based in Luxembourg, or in the steel industry. We have ArcelorMittal, who is based in Luxembourg, which is just one of the largest steel producer in the world. So even though it's a small country, there are a couple of huge companies. Another ones, and that is more recently, companies like Amazon, for example, who have their European headquarters in Luxembourg. And that it's not only a mailbox, and it's not only for fiscal reasons. They're actually having 2,000 people or 2,500 people working in Luxembourg. In proportion, that's quite a big number. The thing is that it has developed to be a hub for quite a lot of huge brands. Why is that the case? It's mainly infrastructure. And part of that infrastructure is the connectivity and, for example, the data centers. So what we do is actually we do invest into infrastructure to make it available to the private sector. So if we do invest into, for example, the dark fiber network or the data center capacity, also the HPC capacity, it is so that it can be available for the private sector, as, for example, the financial sector and others. So that is what we do. So we make it 100% available to the private sector. It's that what it's used to be. It's not only for institutional or for the defense sector and so on. It's also that, but it's not only that. So the whole idea behind is making it available for now. And that is also why we actually have a couple of companies that are, for example, US-based, but also, I don't know, Japanese, South Korean, another part of the world, who at some point of the development of their business, they decide that they need a European hub, so that they do need a European headquarter and that they do need to be closer to their customers. That is true, for example, for Amazon. Why they are in Europe? Because a huge amount of their customers are actually based in Europe. So that is why they're looking for a place in Europe. And then there are a couple of places where you can go, and one of them is Luxembourg. And we make it attractive for them by several reasons, and one of them is the infrastructure that we actually do have.
That's great. And I read on your website that LuxConnect has deployed over 1,800 kilometers of optical fiber, supporting critical services and enabling the ultra-fast broadband connectivity. How do you envision the infrastructure evolving to meet the future demands for AI and quantum computing and maybe the next generation technology?
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. One has to be honest and transparent about that. We are among the countries who have invested proportionally the most actually into the broadband strategy, connectivity, dark fiber, and so on. But still, it's other things that have become much more important nowadays because of the emergence of the artificial intelligence, of course, and so on that are deployed. And that is, for example, the electric grid, just to give you an example. So there are challenges ahead of us that are really huge. And there are two things that come together that would speak for Luxembourg. One is, and probably it's a bit arrogant to put it like that, but Luxembourg is one of the states in the world that have no public debt that is even worth to be mentioned. So financially, it's one of the countries who have a very positive financial situation. So we have the means to invest into those things. And the electric grid in Luxembourg, for example, is very reliable. It's very rare that the lights go off. So that is something that helps us a lot. And also, just to give you a number, there are 25% of the Tier 4 data centers, so the highest category in the data center world, are in Luxembourg. So a quarter of the best quality of the data centers, even though we're just a very tiny nation, even though a quarter of all the highest quality data centers are based in Luxembourg. So the unique selling point is actually quality and trust. So that is what we offer. And that is why, of course, we are quite attractive to all those companies who want to invest in Luxembourg. But the huge challenge in my perspective today is indeed electricity and energy as such. So it's the electric grid, but it's also, of course, getting energy, and especially in Europe, and you have read about it, that we are used to be quite dependent of Russian energy providers. That is the past for now. I mean, for 2.5 years now, that is over. So we were and we are looking for alternative resources for our energy. There's still Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, and Finland, and so on, where there is actually the possibility to get quite a lot of gas. The renewables are, of course, the future in this, and making us more independent from the Russian providers. This was the huge challenge today. It's actually the energy, it's less the infrastructure as such.
You know what? I'm going to skip around for my next question because it goes perfectly into this. LuxConnect has earned recognition for its sustainability efforts, from using 100% renewable energy to innovative cooling and waste heat recycling. Can you talk us through some of those sustainable practices in your data centers and explain how they optimize performance while minimizing the environmental impact?
Yes, the thing is, and that is something that is also particular in Europe, even if we would not want to do it, we would be forced to do it. Because that's the regulation, and that's the path that the European Commission and the EU has taken. So over time, until 2030, we are more or less forced to be carbon neutral in our activities. But for us as a company, that is not a huge problem, because we have done this for 15 years. The energy, 100% of the energy that we consume in our data centers and that our customers consume in our data centers is green energy. And when I say green energy, it's the classic classification of green energy, meaning nuclear energy is not included. So those 100% energy does all come from renewables, mainly wind and solar power, and some hydro power. And all of that comes also, by the way, from Scandinavian areas. So that is why we buy our electricity. That is the first thing. The second thing is what we also do, and that is more recent, that we do a compensation scheme, meaning that even though our carbon footprint would be X, we would compensate X into projects, mainly into the southern global area in the world. So investing into projects of solar powered initiatives that are, for example, in Africa, Bangladesh, and other parts of the world, because we still believe and we think that a huge part of the difference that you could make today, and with much more margin into doing a difference, is in other parts of the world and in the western part of this earth. So that is a huge part of what we do. And then another thing is, and that is also something that functions almost 10 years now, that we use our waste heat, for example, to actually produce new energy. That is one part of it, but also, it's actually cogeneration installation, where we use the waste heat to produce new energy. And the other thing is that we do projects like, for example, heating infrastructure that is just next to our data centers. So there are areas, yes, actually a mall, and then a home for elderly people, and a hospital, and things like that are using our waste heat during winter time to heat their infrastructure.
Do you think Europe is more receptive to renewable energy sources and things like that compared to the United States? It seems like the United States is lagging in that, I think.
It's difficult to say, because Europe is a continent, but there's also 27 countries in the European Union, and it's over 46 nations on the continent, 48 actually. So, and also in the United States, you have different areas with very different problems. It's completely different whether you live in California or just somewhere in Montana. The challenges are very different, and that is also true for Europe. If you live more in the south of Europe, you just can feel it every day that something has changed in recent years. But also, if you live in, I don't know, which country like Switzerland, who also has a huge amount of tourism into skiing, for example, You can see it every season that something has changed in recent years. And depending on where you live, you are more willing actually to accept that something has to happen to change this. And this is also true for Luxembourg, of course. It's very depending on where you live. But on the other side, on the political level, one has to say that the European countries and also the European Union as such is one of the front runners when it comes to agreements to fight climate change. Yes, there is some front runner initiatives that come from the European Union, but in the end, it's just a question of where is the motivation, the largest, and that is very often linked to how close you are to actually the changes that you live. And
That makes
so, I mean,
sense.
if you are a citizen of a country somewhere in the Sahel zone in Africa, you would be very motivated to fight climate change. Probably you are less motivated when you live in north of Norway. So it's just matter of fact.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like we mentioned earlier, LuxConnect hosts the MeluXina National High Computing Supercomputer, a significant milestone for Luxembourg and LuxConnect. So,
Yeah.
congratulations. What role does MeluXina play in advancing AI research and supporting businesses that rely on the high performance computing?
It's such an exciting project. I
Mhm.
might be overexcited when I talk about it. There are two things that are so exciting about this. First of all, actually, yes, we do have a machine today, computing
Mhm.
power, 18,000 petaflops, and we will have a new machine that we just decided to invest into it quite recently. What makes it so special are two things. One is that it's functioning as a part of a European network. So you
Mm.
can not only see one machine that is based in Luxembourg, but you actually have to focus on a network. So there are 12 or 14 machines that are deployed all over Europe. One is in Italy, one is in Germany, one is in France, one is in Finland, and so on. So actually, they are interconnected. All those machines together have a huge calculating power and actually bring us much further. And the focus is indeed on research and university activities in all kinds of areas. And just to give you an example, and that is a project that is running on our Luxembourg supercomputer, there is a team of PhD students at the University of Luxembourg who actually are feeding the Luxembourgish HPC with all kinds of data that is linked to chemistry. Actually, every little thing that we are surrounded by, we is fed into that computer in all that kind of states. So
Wow.
how does this material interact over time, over temperature influence? How would it be reacting when it's confronted with other chemical elements and so on? So you have that one. When then you put on the other side a digital twin of the humans, for example, you are very fast into an artificial intelligence model where you can say, actually, if we do know how human beings react when they are confronted with all those chemicals, we actually might be able to develop new medication. And that is
Yeah.
something that is just happening right now. And that is
Right.
enormous. So the potential of what is happening on that machine is just, it's mind blowing. And there are few examples of that. The same is true for climate change. We just talked about it. To see if we feed those machines with all the data that we have about the different regions in the world, about forestation in those regions, about climate changes that will already happen, and we can do actually a forecast, not over the next 5 days, but the next 500 years, of how this would have an impact, not only on the meteorology, but also on the people who would live there, on their health state, what would be the impact of climate change on their health, and so on. And that is something that is possible today. And that is something that is happening on that machine. And it is, of course, it's all research and it's theoretical today, but we are very close to bringing this to the real world and very close to bringing it to industry, for example. When I talked about the medication before, just behind is the whole pharmacy industry who can use this. Of course, they're making their profits, but they also will use it to actually help the people. So it's not something that is only theoretical. It's quite close to our everyday life.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Congratulations. That sounds exciting.
It is very exciting.
Yeah. And as data volumes grow with AI advancements, so I imagine the challenges due for data centers in terms of scalability and cooling and energy efficiency. What are the biggest opportunities and challenges that you see for LuxConnect and the broader European data center industry in the coming years?
Yeah, the biggest challenge is honestly to keep up the pace in building actually new data centers. We were surprised, not shocked, but surprised by the emergence of artificial intelligence for the last years. There's lots of articles are written about ChatGPT, Gemini, and I don't know what. But in fact, it has been, I don't know, brought to the broader public or having been democratized in some way just by the emergence of, for example, ChatGPT. And this has created a huge boost in the market. And to give you there again a number, we were used to projects when customers came to us and asked for, I don't know, 1 megawatt of power availability, for example. This is now has not doubled, but it's per hundred. So we have now potential customers who ask that whether we'd be able to provide 50 or 100 megawatt power availability, which is there's something that we have not lived before. So we have to, our biggest challenge is making that possible because we want to make it possible, partly because it's just what the market asks. We are there to respond to the market. But from a European point of view, it's also a question about sovereignty. And this is something that we share in the United States and in Europe. If we do not want that all these things happen in China or other parts of the world, we have to make sure that we have the infrastructure making it possible to be happening in the Western world, to put it like that. And it's becoming especially sensitive when it comes, for example, to health, but also defense, of course, and other parts of activities where we do not want that this happens anywhere in the world, but we actually have also a political will that this happens among allies, to put it like that. And that is something that is our biggest challenge, to make that possible. So it's huge investments to be made. Money is not even the question, but it's also all other kinds of things that you need to have the means to make that possible. And this is our biggest challenge, but also it's what we actually are doing right now. So what we will be doing for the next, I don't know, 3-4 years is investing massively into more infrastructure.
I think that's smart. And before we wrap up, I'd like to ask a couple of lighter questions so our audience can get to know you a little better. When you do step away from your work, what are some activities or hobbies that you are passionate about?
Usually those questions I answer sports, but people who know me better tend to question this. But it's still something, we are in a business where unfortunately you still you spend a lot of time in the office. Being close to nature is something that is very important to me. I used to be a very active Boy Scout, something that is also known in the United States. When I was a kid, my kids were in a Boy Scout and so on. And in Luxembourg is something that you will not meet any family where not at least one member of the family is active in the Boy Scout, something very popular in Luxembourg. This is something that I'm quite active as well. And for the rest, I'm trying to be active in activities where I can bring all my intelligence into something productive.
Oh, I like that. And finally, what piece of advice would you give to individuals or businesses looking to enter the data center industry, or those maybe who are wanting to navigate the demands of AI and high performance computing?
Yeah, it's much easier for US audience than it is for a European audience than to follow the principle of try things and accept that you might fail with it. I know that it's something that is much closer to the United States than it is still nowadays to European culture. But the try and error principle is something that I have experienced as a very productive principle. So we just have to try things and we have to take the risks that sometimes it might just not work.
I think that's good because you learn by your mistakes too. So
Exactly. You will never
you,
learn by your successes. You only learn by
yes,
mistakes. Yeah.
that's true. I think that's good piece of advice. Thank you so much for joining us today,
Thank
Paul.
you.
I appreciate you sharing your insights, and it's been a real pleasure learning more about you and your work at LuxConnect. So thanks
Thank
again
you,
for
Ali.
joining us.
Have a good day. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.